Hello, and thank you for joining today's webinar, COMPLi HBS Legislation Ukraine, presented in collaboration with BioPartners. We appreciate your patience and your involvement. Just a few reminders before we begin the presentation. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available to all registrants and attendees within 48 hours after the event. If you have any questions at any point during the presentation, please ask them by using the Q&A function, which you should see at the bottom of your Zoom window with the large letters Q&A. We will answer submitted questions at the end of the presentation. My name is Mariana, and I'm the primary contact for human biological samples at scientist.com. I have worked for the UK's National Healthcare Service, managing both clinical and research aspects of liver transplant at one of London's transplant centres. I was also part of the founding team of the University College London initiative to enable ethical and compliant access to fresh human tissue for research. My role at scientist.com and the initiative for this webinar series is to support human biospecimen project needs and help researchers and suppliers navigate the complex HBS space through the scientist.com platform and the COMPLi functionality, enabling visibility, traceability, and control over the acquisition and use of human biological samples in research. I'm really looking forward to this event with BioPartners to help us all better understand the regulations and best practices surrounding sourcing and supplying human samples from Ukraine. BioPartners has an extensive presence in the HBS acquisition space and has operations in Ukraine. With us today to discuss Ukraine HBS regulations is Mariana Gredo. Mariana has worked extensively with both sponsors and CROs as a study coordinator, a CRA, project manager, auditor, and director over the past 14 years. Mariana has conducted hundreds of study visits and developed and facilitated training in order to start up and support hundreds of successfully completed projects. In 2019, she continued her career path in clinical research, working as a CRA for BioPartners Inc. in the USA, using her experience for development of the company. Thank you for joining me today. I will now hand over to Mariana, who will guide us through the HBS legislation in Ukraine.
Thank you, Maria, very much for introduction. And as Maria has already told, BioPartners Incorporated is the company in the USA, and BioPartners Incorporated has several exclusive partners in Ukraine, subcontract CROs, and these CROs collect human biospecimens in Ukraine. So that is why today we are going to provide an overview information on how non-invasive clinical trials are conducted in Ukraine. In particular, main conditions and legislative framework for obtaining human biospecimens, as well as export and import legislation applied to serve clinical trials needs. And I would like to underline that we today touch only the aspects of non-invasive clinical trials related to collection and obtaining human biospecimens. On this slide, you can see the main local and international documents, the legislative acts that regulate collection of biospecimens and clinical trials, both in Ukraine and internationally. Such local acts like fundamentals of the legislation of Ukraine on health care, laws of Ukraine on medicines, as well as on the protection of personal data, GDPR, order of the Ministry of Health of Ukraine that regulates clinical trials practices. These documents, these laws are based on international acts such as Good Clinical Practice, General Data Protection Regulation, International Conference on Harmonization, and other recognized documents. Compliance with the local and international legislation is reflected in the main principles of work of every BioPartners Incorporated subcontractor in Ukraine. And these principles are as follows. So the research studies are conducted strictly in compliance with ethical standards, based on respect of a person's life, health, and interests. Then a voluntary informed consent is always obtained for each subject of the study, and it happens prior to the start of the study manipulations. And then both either it is data collection or the sample collection, their consent, voluntary consent of the study subject is obtained prior to any such manipulation. Then personal data that are collected during the study is a subject to strict protection, and the data obtained, clinical data obtained during the study are de-identified, and all the documentation that is collected, is received during the clinical study, is kept in the protected place at the clinical site, so that the personal data, the data of the patient are protected. And transparency and legality of the collection of human biospecimens in Ukraine by the CROs of that cooperate with BioPartners Incorporated is also confirmed by a possibility of audits at the clinical sites at any time needed. Legality and strict compliance with current regulatory acts is confirmed by the following legal instruments. That means that legality of the clinical study of collection of human biospecimens is certified, is confirmed, first of all, by signed agreements between the CRO and the clinical site. These are cooperation agreement with the clinical site. It is usually called master agreement. Then cooperation agreement with the principal investigator, and research study protocol. The next step and the next important part in this is review and approval of the documents for conduction of the research study by the local ethics committee or local ethics commission. Usually it is called commission. Local ethics commission provides an approval that permits activities on conduction of clinical study at the definite clinical site, and the CRO is provided with a document that confirms this approval. And the last, but not less important, is signed informed consent form that is always obtained from the patient and is kept at the clinical site at the protected place. As of today, BioPartners subcontractors collect human biospecimens for multiple clinical trials at over than 80 clinical sites. And we can start collection of the samples right away at those clinical sites. But still, I'd like to demonstrate at this slide the main stages of clinical trial initiation at the clinical site. Well, BioPartners subcontract CRO prepares and submits a set of documents to the clinical site, to the administration of the clinical site, and to the approved by the administration of the clinical site principal investigator. So the administration of the clinical center has to sign master clinical study agreement that regulates cooperation, main points, main aspects of cooperation between the CRO and clinical site, for example, hospital. And principal investigator estimates perspective and conditions of the study, signs principal investigator agreement, and submits to the local ethics committee the set of documents for approval. This set of documents always includes the following protocol for the collection of the biospecimens, patient's information sheet, and patient-informed consent, and other documents required, needed for approval. Local ethics committee on its sitting considers, reviews all those documents, and the members of the ethics committee by voting decide whether this collection, this protocol can be used, and if the clinical study can be conducted as a definite clinical site. As a confirmation of this approval is the issuing the document, the approval of the ethical commission. In the previous slides, I've already mentioned a uniform general protocol used for collection of human biospecimens for various requests. And in our practice of work with CROs in Ukraine, we use a uniform general protocol at all clinical sites. And this general protocol is a kind of an umbrella type protocol, and it covers a wide range of human biospecimen types, collection, processing, and storage conditions. And the using of such a general protocol allows us to start collection of biospecimens on a definite request right after the release of the purchase order. And this helps to avoid any additional delay related to approval of the specific client's protocol. But it is not a problem if our customers insist on using their specific protocol. This protocol also can be approved and can pass through the approval process at the clinical site and can be approved by ethics committee. One of the most important conditions for clinical trials is observance of confidentiality and protection of the rights and well-being of the study subjects. And the measures to achieve these conditions are as follows. First of all, every study subject who agreed to participate in the research is assigned a unique ID. And this unique ID is used to mark all the documents related to the participation of this person in the study, in particular registration form, all clinical data reports, all sample collection logs, and any type of documents related, and also all samples, biospecimens collected from this person within the study are also marked with this unique ID, so that the participation of every study subject is easily traceable, and the confidentiality is observed. All demographics and clinical data that are provided are pseudonymized, and our clients never get any documents or any pieces of personal patient's personal information. All information collected within the scope of the study is stored in a strictly confidential form and according to the law of Ukraine on personal data protection that is based on internationally recognized GDPR. Here I would like to focus on the local ethics commission information. Local Ethics Commission is the main regulatory organ that directly controls, monitors, and approves clinical trials conducted at every clinical site. So every clinical site that has the right to participate in the clinical trials has its local ethics commission. And this local ethics commission been based at a clinical site is independent organization and includes not only people who work at the clinical site, but also the specialists not directly involved into medicine or clinical trials. And this ensured that the decision on conduction of clinical trial is always made objectively and with the observance of patients' interests. Local ethics committees agree on conducting the clinical trial at the clinical site. They monitor its during the whole course of the clinical trial, and any part of the clinical study process can address its questions or any requests directly to the local ethics commission. As I've already told, the main document that allows to start collection of biospecimens at the clinical site is the approval of ethical commission. And this document, approval of the ethical commission, usually consists of the standard information blocks. They are the full name and identification of the clinical trial protocol and amendments to the protocol, the list of reviewed documents, name and of the organizations that submitted the documents to the ethics committee, place of conducting the clinical trial, the name of the hospital or clinic, the surname and the position of principal investigator, and of course, the decision on approval or motivated refusal or recommendations to the CRO, and the date of decision, a recommendation on the ethical, the date of decision, and the list of members who participated in the voting, and the date and signature of the chairman that certifies that the clinical study, the collection can be started right away. I've brought all main facts regarding obtaining human biospecimens and would like to pass to the information about international and local requirements for export of human biospecimens from Ukraine and import of the necessary supplies or equipment to the territory of Ukraine. This is regulated by the following legislative acts. These are Customs Code of Ukraine and the law on the customs tariff of Ukraine. And this law contains also classification codes for biological samples for export and import. And this is the annex to this law. And these two laws are the main regulatory acts for export and import of biological samples to Ukraine or from Ukraine. Well, the main documents that should be present and accompany the shipment of the samples from Ukraine are as follows: accreditation, registration by customs control authorities, and the receipt of registration number for export or import. Second, agreement with the representative worldwide cargo express delivery company for export of biological samples and subcontractors of BioPartners Incorporated, the CROs in Ukraine. They have active agreements with almost all worldwide recognized cargo express delivery companies like Ford Courier or DHL and other. Then the next, it's accreditation for dangerous goods transportation. Biological samples known to be potentially dangerous. That is why this accreditation is important. So, and the CROs of BioPartners, their staff have this certificate allows to control and to prepare transportation of dangerous goods. Next, I would like to show you the examples of the documents that accompany the shipment of biospecimens from Ukraine. Well, here's the example of dangerous good authority letter. This authority letter is prepared and signed before the shipment of the biospecimens. And this document is called Proformer Invoice, and this document contains the information about the shipping part, about the CRO in Ukraine that ships the samples, the receiving party, and the description of the biospecimen with its codes, and the signature of the CRO director that certifies the shipment of the definite quantity of a definite type of biospecimens. If several types of biospecimens are shipped in the same shipment, thus the Proformer invoice will contain information about every type of the shipped samples. Well, at this slide, you can see the example of the certificate IATA, the certificate that confirms the possibility of controlling dangerous good shipments by the staff representative of Ukrainian CROs. Well, I hope that the information presented during our webinar today showed you that working with BioPartners Incorporated and obtaining samples from Ukrainian sites, you won't face any time delays or any need for additional preparation of documents, and we can guarantee smooth and timely collection of biospecimens you need in your projects. And in this way, we hope to serve the development of the science in the best way. So please, if you have any questions, I'm ready and happy to answer.
Thank you, Mariana. And thank you, everyone, for following along through the presentation as well. I hope it has given you all some insight into sourcing human samples from Ukraine. We can now get into some of the questions that you all have asked. And whilst I do that, please feel free to continue entering your questions in the Q&A box, and we will get through them as quickly as we can. One of the first questions that has come through is, do you recruit both healthy volunteers and diseased patients in your research studies?
Yes, we recruit both categories of the study subjects, and moreover, we have a possibility to recruit healthy volunteers. The blood donation center where their status of healthy people is confirmed by their routine examinations, and their status of blood donor confirms that they are healthy.
The next question, it's kind of like a two-tier question. The first part is the data you provide anonymized, and is there a possibility to have follow-up collections from the same donors in case the researchers are interested in that?
Sure. At the clinical side, all principal investigators, they have registration logs, and in those logs, there is a link between the ID assigned to the patient, to the study subject, and his or her name, surname, and identification of the case history or other primary documents. So having access through our principal investigators to the registration log, we can trace the particular patient, and principal investigator can contact the patient in order to invite to the participation in the clinical study again.
Thank you so much. I can see we've had a few last minute attendees, so I'm just gonna repeat myself a little bit. If you do have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A box. It should be at the bottom of the Zoom window to ask any questions. One other question that has come through is, does your company need to approve any special protocols or project specifications through an ethics committee for each of your clinical sites?
There is no need for it because as I've told in the presentation, we use general uniform protocol, and this protocol allows collection of different types of human biospecimens and covers various possible storage or processing methods. And but on the other hand, if the customer requires, if the customer insists, we can also approve specific customers protocol or specification through the ethical committee sitting and receive the approval of the specific customer's protocol if needed. But using of uniform protocol saves time and efforts.
Fantastic. I know that's always important. Speed is always of the essence. And this is, so do the clients need any specific paperwork, certificates, or licenses to import samples from Ukraine, or is that your certification sufficient? Do they need to do anything from their side?
The CROs in Ukraine prepare all necessary accompanying documents to ship the samples from the territory of Ukraine. But on the other hand, the laboratories, the scientific group on the other end should have the license to work with definite type of human biospecimens. Otherwise, they cannot receive the specimens from in their country. That is requirement, and we cannot help it. We just through our CROs in Ukraine can collect, prepare, and ship the samples. Receiving the samples on the other end is the function of our clients.
So just for my benefit, really, so there is no need for the client to complete anything for Ukraine. Everything's taken care of by the CRO. But if there's any special needs on the receipt the receiving end, then they need to take care of that, correct?
Right. But usually scientific groups, institutes, or laboratories, they have all necessary licenses to work with biospecimens, and usually it does not create any additional problems or any additional tasks.
Fantastic. We do have some time for a few more questions if you have them. One question that I have right now is, how does Ukraine deal with post-mortem donations, both for transplantation, but particularly for research? Is that something that's commonly done?
No, unfortunately, no. Population here is not ready for such process. Usually, people do not give their consent for post-mortem donation. That is why post-mortem donation is difficult in Ukraine, and unfortunately, no. At this moment, maybe it will take some years until people understand the necessity and importance of such things, like to give consent for postmortem donation of organs to save somebody's lives or to serve development of the science. At the moment, it is not popular, and it is not, there is a kind of prejudice against postmortem donation in Ukraine.
I understand. Hopefully, we'll see that change soon. I'm not seeing any more questions coming through. We've had some interesting ones. Thank you, everyone. So I guess at this point, we could complete our questions for the day. If you do, however, come up with any questions or you would like to know more about either scientist.com or BioPartners, you can see the contact details on the screen right now. So feel free to contact us. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. As I said, this will be made available within the next 48 hours. So as you're leaving the webinar, you will see a quick survey, and we would really appreciate it if you could fill this out. It helps us optimize the webinars that we offer and all the information that we can provide for you. And last but not least, thank you to BioPartners and Mariana for their involvement in the presentation.
Thank you for the support and possibility to tell people about our company and collection samples, obtaining samples, sourcing samples in Ukraine.
Perfect. Thank you all again, and thank you for joining us, and we hope you found this presentation useful. Have a lovely rest of your day.
Thank you. Bye.